Hey, it's Jeff. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the Alocasia, as this is one plant that I struggled with a lot when I first started collecting them, but I've also learned a ton about them in regards to like how to care for it, propagate it, but also when they are just not looking good and some of the things that I did to correct that so that they continue to grow and be luscious, healthy houseplants. So let's get into it. Normally I dive right into the basic care for a plant, but I think with alocasias I'm going to start off with when they are just no longer thriving, when they're actually declining, because there's nothing more frustrating than bringing a plant home and having it die off. So with alocasias, probably the most important thing that I learned about these are that they actually go dormant. There is a few things that I've learned along the way that can send these plants into dormancy. I guess I should start off with this. Is my original alocasia that I bought. This is the Silver Dragon. When I first bought it, for the first few days it looked really good. I gave it some water and then everything went really droopy. I did make a video about saving my Alocasia Silver Dragon. If you want to go see that, I'll leave it up in the top corner here. So I decided to take it out of the soil and I noticed that it had root rot. So those are kind of the two big things for alocasias. When they start to decline, either they're going into dormancy or they are suffering from root rot. Now with this one, I took it out of the soil and it was a very heavy, like a peat moss based soil. Now I guess one thing that I learned about this plant is that alocasias, they like a really chunky soil. So like this one right here, it's got a lot of orchid bark, perlite and some charcoal. Same with this one right here. It's just a really chunky mix. So the roots like a lot of airflow. This Alocasia Silver Dragon, I did rescue it or save it just by planting it in perlite. So I water the perlite like I would with just regular soil. Basically water it as I normally would, fertilize. There's no difference in how I care for it, but I will talk about watering a little bit later here. Now for the dormancy period, whenever you bring a houseplant home, I've noticed, and again, this is just all my experience, my opinion, when you bring an Alocasia home from a greenhouse or a store, the conditions there would be much different, or assuming different than it would be in your house. So that can send the plant into dormancy as well. There might be a difference in humidity levels and temperature, that sort of thing. So that can definitely send the plant into dormancy. You basically will see some leaves starting to droop, they'll start to fall off, they'll turn yellow, and you think that your plant is dying, but it actually might just be going into dormancy. If it's declining, take it out of the pot and check out the roots. If there is sufficient roots, or if the roots look really healthy, then it's probably just going into dormancy. Just basically keep it in like a higher light location, continue to water it as you normally would, and it should produce some new leaves. That's exactly what happened with my Alocasia High-Low Beauty. Bought this plant, it had two gorgeous leaves, and then downstairs here in my little plant room, the leaves just started to get really droopy and it died off pretty quick, and I thought for sure it was a goner. What I did is I just kept up with the regular care. I've been watering it whenever the soil is dry, and I've been keeping it in brighter light. This one's actually upstairs. I did move it upstairs. And you can see here is the old dead stem, and it is getting a new stem from right there, just out of the top of the bulb. So you may think that your plant is dying, but mine actually went dormant. I just continued to provide it the same care, and now it's coming out of dormancy, and it's now adjusting to my house and the conditions, and it's regrowing. So if you think your Alocasia is dying, don't throw it out. Look at the roots. And again, if there's no roots, as long as the bulb or the corm is firm, then just stick it back in the soil and it will regrow. Don't throw them out unless it's like really mushy or rotting. Here's another example. This is the Alocasia sinuata, or mirror face. The same thing that happened to my High-Low Beauty, this one did as well. Basically all the leaves fell off, and now it is just exploding with growth. It's produced two like side branches, I guess, through rhizomes. And so it's basically three separate plants now in one pot, but it is just getting a ton of new leaves. They're all getting new leaves. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Now I guess I can kind of segue into the care for these plants. Alocasias, for indoor care, I do have some outdoor ones that I'll talk about basically at the end. I'm just learning from those, but for the indoor care, you want to give them a nice, bright, sunny area. So I have a lot of mine under these grow lights in my basement here. But this one, is actually upstairs. It's on my plant table, tucked behind my jade plants near a south-facing window. So it gets some direct sunlight, just kind of poking through the jade plants, but just make sure it is getting a lot of light. These guys like a lot of light, but nothing direct. Otherwise it'll scorch the leaves. If you have something near, say like an east window would be good, something maybe pulled back from a south or west facing window, and these plants will do really, really well for you in those higher light locations. They love the grow bulbs, so if you can supplement kind of like a lower light location with some grow lights, then that's probably your best bet there as well if you don't have a bright sunny spot. Watering is kind of the tricky thing with these guys. They don't like too much water, like they don't like to sit in wet soil, but they don't like dry soil as well. So if the top inch is dry, you can see, just stick your finger in there. You can see it's a little bit damp lower in the soil here, but the top is dry. So that's basically when I water these plants, is when the top dries out. If the leaves get a little bit droopy, then that's, and the soil's dry, then yeah, you've basically gone too far. You don't want it to dry out completely, but you don't want to keep it like completely saturated with water. That is one thing. If you underwater these plants, it will send it into dormancy. So if you're not watering it or keeping an eye on it and you're not giving it enough light, those are two factors that can send these plants into dormancy. Doesn't mean it's dead, but if you like continuously water this plant, then you're going to potentially give it some root rot, and then it's basically dead. So pay attention to the soil mostly. If it's dry and the top 1 inch, then give it some water. I have just some filtered tap water. Sorry, it's a little bit closer. And then basically this is all I do, is just kind of soak it until it comes out the bottom of the drain hole. It's coming out the bottom. So that's basically all I'll give it. I'll empty out this saucer, but just let it kind of drip through, and I can feel the weight of the pot is a little bit heavier. This isn't a large pot, so I'm not gonna like continuously soak it. I might give it a little bit more actually. I currently have 2 alocasias in just straight perlite, and this is the dragon scale, and the one back here is the silver dragon. This one right now has only 3 leaves, but obviously this is the newest one. It is the largest. These ones are starting to get a little bit droopy, so that is telling me that it is going to lose these leaves, so it's probably pushing out some new growth, or hopefully it'll push out some new growth soon. Look at the back of these leaves. Like, everyone admires the front, like gorgeous, but look at the back, crazy. I see this little marking every once in a while, and I chalk that up as to leaf edema. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but I notice whenever I give it some water, I get these little areas on the back. I'm going to assume that is leaf edema. Okay, so the perlite, look at these roots. Nice, nice roots. Okay, the perlite is really dry, and that's the nice thing about perlite, is you can tell whether it is dry or if it is like if there's moisture in it. So right now it's just basically turns to dust. At the bottom, I can feel there is some moisture. So I'm not gonna give it like a ton of water, and I might actually give it a little bit of fertilizer as well. I'll show you what I use here, but I just can't get over these leaves. This is the fertilizer that I use. It's Dynagrow Foliage Pro. It is a liquid plant fertilizer. Just follow the directions on the back, mix it up in your watering can, and then water like you normally would. Just mixed in a little bit of the fertilizer. Just gonna top this up here, just like that. And then I'm just going to just dump the water in, just kind of lightly over the top, and then let it soak through. And I empty out the water collecting at the bottom. And that's all I do. Come on. Just let it drain out, and then I'll empty the container. I like using these orchid pots as well, because you can see the root growth along the side, and then there's even new little rhizomes down there as well. Let's rotate it around. Yeah, I find it's a very good growing medium. I don't know if anyone else does this out there, but so far I'm really impressed with the just straight perlite for these alocasias. I wouldn't say humidity is like a huge deal with alocasias, because right now downstairs I do have a humidifier going, but it's 58% downstairs, But my upstairs alocasias, they're probably only sitting around like maybe 40%. So regular house humidity, like my Silver Dragon and the Dragon Scale, those are the ones that are in lower humidity, and they are doing really, really well. So I wouldn't say humidity is like the end all like factor that you absolutely need for these plants to grow and thrive. I think just like a consistent schedule for watering, so making sure that it doesn't dry out too often and it's getting enough light, is probably more beneficial than like super high humidity. This is my Alocasia Black Velvet, and right now it does have 5 leaves, but I've noticed with this one, it only has like maybe 3 good looking leaves at one time. So with some varieties, you might only get like 1 or 2 or 3 leaves that look really good while the others die off. So I'm going to show you one thing that I've noticed when these plants grow. If you want to cut these ugly leaves off, you can, or just tear them off. So this is the lowest one. I'm just going to try and remove it off of the stem. You can just peel it off. Sometimes, yeah, just like that. The entire stem and leaf just peel off nicely. This one's not looking the greatest, so you can do that, or you can cut it off. So yeah, this is the easiest and safest way, so that like if you make a cut, you can potentially introduce bacteria and fungus and that sort of thing. Never had a problem with it, but it's just something to consider if you're not using like sterile, clean pruning shears. I never do. Like, I'll be honest, I don't clean these. I might rinse them off, but I don't put alcohol on them and sanitize them. Yeah. Anyways, back on topic. It's a little difficult to see with this one, but I'm going to come over to this Alocasia Fradec. This is actually a little propagated one off of the main plant, which again, lost all its leaves. It's now getting some new leaves. So when you cut off a dying leaf, there is a portion you can see right here where the new leaf comes out of. So if you were to cut back a leaf, if it had like one single leaf and you were to cut it back, and you cut it back like very low, then you're potentially cutting back a new growth point. So say if this leaf right here is declining and you want to cut it back, just make sure you cut it up like higher in the stem, so that you're not cutting the portion, see if it'll focus, where the new growth point is going to come out of. And you can see on the other Fradec right here, the new leaf is developing out of the original leaf's stem. So that's how they grow. This is the newest leaf on my Alocasia cuprea. See the back here, just absolutely gorgeous. This lower leaf, it has no effect on the development of new leaves, so it's a little bit too low in the soil for me to, I guess, like tear it off. So for this one, I'm just going to cut it back lower. Let the plant focus its energy on the new growth, which is back here. I'm getting a new leaf. And typically what happens is the newest leaf will be larger than the, I guess, last current newest leaf. So hopefully that makes sense. This one is quite large. It's it's maybe like half the size of my hand, but I'm hoping this one is a large leaf. So now for propagation, the easiest way is just by plant division. You can see this one has a couple different stems in this same pot. So basically, I'll do it here in a second, but you just take the plant out, snip off one of the rhizome plant shoots. So it basically shoots out a little root off to the side, spits out a new plant. Those are proper professional terms, spits out a plant at the top here. But I'm gonna take it out of the pot here and I'll divide this one. But you can also do it by these little bulbs or corms. So you can see right here, there is a little bulb sticking out of the soil. It basically just looks like, I don't know, a little ball on the end of a stem. You can see it a little bit better right there. So that little guy is sticking out. I'm just gonna take my pruning shears and just snip it off like this. So here is the little bulb. And I'm going to be potting this up in some soil. You can stick it right back in the perlite. You can put it, I'm going to put this one in soil. This is the new growth point that's popping through there. The roots will grow like along the side of the bulb here. So easy way, if you repot in Alocasia, you find a bunch of these in the soil, pot them up in their own little container and you will get a new plant from this little bulb or corm. That's what I did with this sad looking guy. This is a corm or a bulb from this silver dragon. Don't mind the leaves. It's looking really, really dry. I forgot to water it. Oh, okay. So there's the roots, super dry. This is my fault. I'm gonna put this up, I'm gonna pot this in some soil. Here is a new little rhizome that has shot off the original one. It's pushed off, a side branch here, and that's where the leaves have grown out of. So this bulb is really hard. It's probably just going dormant because I didn't water it enough. So small containers of perlite, I don't recommend. I'm gonna put some soil in this. I'm gonna pot the other bulb in this one in some soil just so it doesn't get so dry. Like these roots, they're like, you can just tear them off just like that. So yeah, not looking the greatest, but what you can do, and I'm actually gonna do it right now, is just cut this guy off like that. This cut portion has some roots. The corm or the bulb, I don't even know what it's called to be honest, has some roots, and I'm going to snip this guy off too. So from this small little plant, I now have 3 separate silver dragon cuttings, and then I have the bulb from the other one, or the rhizome I guess they're technically called. So I have 4 silver dragons that I'll be potting up. Don't worry, you're not going to harm the plant from pruning it or propagating it. It's probably going to actually be better for the plant because it'll have more room in the pot. Like this one, I love how like bushy it is. So I'm really hesitant to cut it up. But for the video, I'm okay with that because I know it will regrow. It's got a ton of growth points. So I'm going to empty this perlite into this container as much as I can without taking the plant out of the pot. See if I can snip it off. See if I can get down lower. I don't want to remove it completely, but I just want to get it to the point where I can see the roots down there like that. I just want to see where it attaches to the main plant, and then I'll make the cut. Look at all the bulbs right down here. Okay, I'm going to take some more of those. I'm just going to cut these guys off. Just snip that right here. Got another little bulb, whoops, right here. And then you can see here's another, looks like a bulb or rhizome developing off of this main stem right there. Okay, so I'm just gonna loosen this up a bit. I want this stem right here to come off. Okay, I got my knife. I just flipped this plant around, or I just turned it around. Gonna get this root out of the way. I'm gonna take the utility knife, lift up. Oh my goodness, this is crammed in there. And get this out of the way, this leaf out of the way. Trying to get a good shot here. So I'm gonna stick the utility knife just in between the 2 plants, and I'm just going to make the cut. There. And then now I can hopefully just pull this guy out. See, I sliced it in half, and I'm just going to slowly manipulate this cutting out. There. Holy smokes, it's got some nice roots. Okay, so this will be going in its own new pot, and there you go. That's how you take a propagated cutting just from plant division, and it's got a super healthy root system which it can sustain on its own now in its own new pot. I like tearing these crusty things off the plant. Okay, I really made a mess, but here is the fresh cut portion. Whoops. You can see this is where I made the nice clean slice. It's got plenty of healthy roots on this large root system. Looks like just another little corm. or sorry, I keep calling them corms. I honestly don't know what the proper term is. I know they are rhizomes, sends out these shoots. It's got a bunch of bulbs, healthy roots, new growth, everything's looking good. Okay, so I'm gonna pot this one up in some soil, as well as these new little rhizome bulbs. I'm gonna tuck this one back in and put it back in its pot. I'm gonna keep this one in perlite. I'm gonna place the other one in soil and see how they do. Okay. For this little cutting right here, this is exactly what I was talking about in regards to getting the new leaf. I'm just gonna cut this higher up because eventually a new leaf will pop out from the stem here. So if I cut it lower, like down here, then I'm just going to harm the newest leaf coming out. So cut it higher, plant this like this, and a new leaf should emerge from the stem. Okay, so I'm gonna pot this up in this terracotta. Normally I would suggest like a regular pot, but what I'm gonna try with this one is the terracotta pot, but I'm gonna top dress it with some sphagnum moss. So I'm just gonna dump in some soil here first. I'm just gonna use this saucer just to give it some water, and then I'm gonna add the moss on top. I have my spray bottle, which I'm just going to soak the soil here just so it comes out the bottom. I just kind of pre-moistened the moss here, and I just take a thin layer and I just place it on top of the soil, just like that, just around the edges. And for my anthuriums, whenever the moss gets dry, that's basically when I water it. So that's how I know when it needs to be watered, is when the top is getting kind of crispy and dry. Okay, so that's how it looks. Now for all those little rhizomes, I just put some soil in a cup like this. For this little guy, the one with the stem, I'm just going to put it slightly below the soil line, just like that, so the stem is sticking out. I'm going to take my pencil, have the pointy portion sticking upwards. I'm going to just push it down in the soil, just so the top portion is just slightly above the soil line, just like that. Same with these other ones. Just gonna stuff them down. You see the roots on this one, just gonna stuff it down. And these two other ones, whoops. Here's the top portion where it's gonna grow. Stuff that down. I don't have much orchid bark in this container, as I want the soil to remain a little bit more on the damp side. And this one I'm going to stuff down just on the side here as well. Okay, so that's my little cup. I'll provide some updates down the road about how these guys are doing. I'm going to give it some water here as well. Just a little spray. Hopefully it'll reach. Whoa. Just like that. Keep them a little bit more on the damp side and give them a bright sunny location, and that's pretty much it. I'm going to show my outdoor ones here kind of at the very end of the video. I'm not going to talk much about them. I'm just going to basically show you how they are situated outside, kind of what they're looking like, and I'll provide some updates down the road. But I think that's going to be pretty much it for this video. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down in the comment section. Otherwise, thanks again for watching. Appreciate all the support. Thanks everyone. Take care. Bye.